Welcome back to the College Football Pick'em Pod. We're a little late this week, but we are here and ready. We're going to make up for our abysmal week 5. We're here with week 6 picks. We're going to get back the first week where we both didn't come out on top, but both on top overall. That's what matters most. We learned a lot. We learned that teams can be very, very bad, and that even some bad teams can play decent. But before we get into everything, we will thank our sponsor here. Phil, what do you have for us?
So I'm going to take a second to thank our sponsor. You know them well, Brett and everyone over at Caneswear. They've got the best selection of Miami Hurricanes gear by far. We're talking hats, we're talking jerseys, shirts you can't find anywhere else. They've got brand new Adidas apparel, plus their own custom clothing, football, baseball, basketball, and much more. You name it, they got it. So head over to caneswear.com or visit the storefront in Davie off University Drive in the Arrowhead Shopping Center. Will. Let's say real quick how bad these were. Like, this was like bad beat after bad beat after bad beat last week. And I had such a good start. I called Army straight up. They won that game by 42-13. I was sitting there. I was king of the castle. I was feeling so good about myself. They didn't just win. They were 9-point underdogs. I told everybody, if you want to be, safe, take the points, but it's a joke. They're going to dominate that game. And they dominated that game. It wasn't even close.
Yeah, we had the UCF one early too.
Yep, UCF.
I had
West Virginia.
I had Tulane covering, and they ended up winning outright against Memphis. I think I was 5-1 to start. I mean, we both started pretty well, and then it just the middle of the day, Saturday, we both went, oh my God.
First of all, Louisville, buy yourself a defense. Louisville, buy yourself an offense that can score more than twice. I know that they ended up putting up 24 points in that game. I had taken the under, and I had taken Florida State to cover 6.5. Biggest nightmare is Florida State wins that game 28-24. What happens? Florida State wins that game 28-24 on the worst game-winning touchdown pass you'll ever see in your entire life. It was a quick slant, and Louisville just could not make a tackle. It was hilarious. It was frustrating. I was angry. But
as a Miami fan, I'm almost glad they came out with that win, and so they don't have this like urge to really come out and play as hard this upcoming week. So at least we're catching Florida State after a win.
And it is Florida State week if you're a Miami Hurricane fan, which, that is huge. Let them beat Louisville. Let them feel good about themselves, and then let's have Miami come out and beat the crap out of them. That's what we're all hoping for as Miami fans. It's just, man, that was a rough week. Stanford didn't show up in the second half. North Texas was winning by 15 and then gave up 21 unanswered to lose.
That's, again, I can't – I mean, it's over me hopping on bets with you because I said every time I hop on a bet with Phil, when I haven't researched it, I haven't looked into it. And I'm like, you know what? That sounds good, Phil. You've convinced me. I always hop on. It always ends up losing. So no more of that. I already swore it off once. Help me, Phil. If I say again, you have to say no more. No more joining me on bets because it's not good for you either.
It's not. North Texas was going to win that game, and then at halftime, the coach came out and said, "Hey, Will jumped on Phil here," and they were like, "All right, man, we can't play anymore. We're at home. We're just not allowed to play defense anymore." And they just didn't, and they didn't play offense either. It's terrible. It was horrible. BYU was atrocious. I don't even know if the football team got on the plane.
The one time Washington actually blows a team out. Man, yeah, it seemed like, and then Rutgers, the one time they don't get blown out. So and then Northwestern, they kept it close with Michigan. Michigan looked awful. Shea Patterson, I don't even think is a decent quarterback. I mean, he might be like a mediocre at best. So that, I mean, I had Michigan covering by 14 just because Northwestern's so bad, but my bad teams didn't come out for me, and that's what really disappointed me because that's kind of how I've been, hitting a lot of bets in the early part of this season.
Yeah. So this week we're coming into it. I'm making 10 bets. $20 on each. That's what I'm doing. I've studied these bets now. These I have, like last week I made like 19 bets. I was like, oh, that one could hit with the 10.
Yeah, and I think we both said I did not like last week's lines whatsoever. So I made a ton. I think I had 17 or 18 bets out, $10 a piece, just spraying it everywhere, and just it didn't hit. It didn't hit for us. So yeah, I have fewer this week too. I've upped it. Most of mine are $15 bets. And so, yeah, I'm kind of going – it's funny. We both kind of went with the same strategy. We can't just bet every game anymore because we were doing well our first first 4 weeks into the season. We were both in the black. We were both making money. And if you're betting with us, you were too. And so I think we were feeling a little bit too good about ourselves. So I'm glad we've kind of, we've come down to earth a bit here.
Everybody needs to be humbled and still be positive. That's the beauty of what happened to us. We had a bad week, but we're both
we're back. We're back.
We're back now. We're ready to go. We're in positive money. We're going to keep on going. We're going to make everybody here money. First game, Georgia State at the Troy Trojans. I got Troy minus 15.5. And I know that last week Georgia State beat University of Louisiana Monroe 46-14. And I know Troy only beat Louisiana Monroe 35-27, but Troy was up 35-7.
We were on that game.
And we were on that game. We were on that game. They were only 7.5-point favorites. Georgia State was actually underdogs last week, which I thought was interesting against Louisiana Monroe. Win 46-14. But before that, they lose 41-7, 59-22 to Memphis, 34-15 to Western Michigan. And you have a Troy team that's pretty good. I mean, they've been killing teams all season. They lost to Boise week 1, which, that's week 1 and it's Boise. They beat Florida A&M 59-7. They beat Nebraska 24-19 at Nebraska, though. They beat Louisiana Monroe 35-27, but that was a 35-7 game, like I was saying. And last week they beat Coastal Carolina 45-21.
See, that's the one that worries me, though. The one where they were up and they had the game won and then gave up like 3 late touchdowns. And we were on that game where we were looking at each other like, oh my gosh, this cannot lose. I just can't,
I understand where you're coming from. I absolutely understand where you're coming from. But I also was the idiot who was on the under in the Memphis-Georgia State game. Ooh. One thing that Troy does is Troy puts up points and Georgia State doesn't play defense. And I know they stopped Louisiana Monroe last week, but I'm not convinced on Louisiana Monroe's offense because, they scored touchdowns at the end of the game, but it was such a blowout already. It's like Troy took their foot off the gas. Georgia State's defense never showed up against Memphis, never showed up against who was the other one that I just said? They never showed up against Western Michigan. So I like Troy in this game to cover the 15.5. This spread started out at about 17, I believe. That's pretty high. So I'm happy to get this at 15.5. I think Troy wins this by 3 touchdowns. It's a short week. They're playing on Thursday night.
Okay.
I think that Troy gets this one.
Yeah, and this is one of those, like, a team that scores a lot of points, that margin gets bigger between the two teams. So I can see it. Not going to hop on it, but I hear
That's good. Don't hop on.
Okay. Do you have anything on Georgia Tech Louisville?
I don't have anything on Georgia Tech Louisville. I am avoiding that game because I don't understand either of those football teams. This is a Friday night.
I don't understand either. Yeah, this is the Friday night one, and I always like getting action in on these weeknight games. Louisville is just bad, I believe, and I think Georgia Tech is going to want to. Excuse my voice. I'm a bit sick. Georgia Tech's at least going to want to come out and just put up points, and they'll be able to score. Like, Louisville doesn't really have a defense at all. We saw it at the end of that Florida State game. And you also, this is the first thing you said, Louisville doesn't have offense or defense. And I think Georgia Tech at least can get something going on offense to put up points. It's a 4.5-point spread right now. I like Georgia Tech to at least win by a touchdown here. So I got them at minus 4.5. I have $15 on it.
Okay, so minus 4.5, you have 15 on that. See, I can see Georgia Tech doing it.
Okay, Georgia Tech is just a capable football team, and Louisville isn't. And this is, I'm going back to, bet against the bad teams because bad teams are bad. And I know it didn't work out for me last week, but it's going to work out more often than not. I know Northwestern covered last week. Rutgers covered last week. I'm not going to abandon my strategy off one bad week. So I'm going to stick to my guns here, and I think Georgia Tech is that much better, 4.5 points better than Louisville.
Yeah, the only thing that scares me a little bit with that is Louisville is at home and it's a shorter week, and Georgia Tech.
Oh, they're not good either.
And the way that they play offense, it's just run the ball. And I've been doing the ACC power rankings for Canes Insights, so a lot of times when I'm filling it out, I'm like, well, Georgia Tech outgained the other team yet again and lost by 21 points. So they get yardage, they just don't put the ball in the end zone. But Louisville last week, they got 2 quick touchdowns on Florida State.
Exactly. They shouldn't even have scored that many to begin with.
No, they should really.
I don't how many points did they have in the entire second half of that game?
I think it was 10 or 7. It was
7, I think. So
yeah, it was a bad game.
Yeah, I just, even if Georgia Tech is putting up field goals, every 3 times they get the ball, I still think that gets the job done. So
Yeah. Well, the next game that I actually have the other two Friday night games here.
Oh,
So
all right.
the next one that I have is Middle Tennessee going to take on the Marshall Thundering Herd, and I have been against the Thundering Herd all year. Last week I said that Western Kentucky was going to beat them, and Western Kentucky ended up losing by 3. That was a really close game. That was just how my week went. That would have been a nice little boost to my morale there if they could have pulled it out. They didn't, but I think Marshall now. A lot of people, this is only at -6, and I have Marshall covering this. And the reason that this is only at -6 is because last week, Middle Tennessee was able to beat Florida Atlantic as only 2.5-point underdogs, but they ended up winning it 25-24. And I think that impressed some people. I've watched Florida Atlantic a couple times. Nothing about Florida Atlantic impresses me. So I think that Marshall is going to be fine in this game. I think that they're going to be able to get their offense going. I think that Marshall has played a much better schedule than Middle Tennessee has. Middle Tennessee is 2-2 right now. They beat Tennessee Martin and Florida Atlantic. They lost to Georgia bad, and they lost to Vanderbilt really bad. And Marshall has played Western Kentucky, who's a little bit better. They lost by 17 in North Carolina State, but it was closer than that. They beat Eastern Kentucky. They beat Miami, Ohio. These are like just better teams than what Middle Tennessee has played. And so I think Marshall's ready for this game. Once again, I love these home teams on the short week where they're the clearly better team. And 6 points, they just have to win by a touchdown. I like Marshall to cover this one. And the next game, after I say that I like these home teams, Utah State versus BYU. This is the only underdog I'm taking this week.
Yeah, I considered this one also.
Yeah, I'm taking them straight up. They're +115. But I think that Utah State, BYU is lost right now. BYU beat Wisconsin, and that got everybody to be like, "Ooh, BYU, they're for real. They're good. They should be ranked." All of that. What has BYU really done other than that Wisconsin? I mean, last week
that's it. You're right.
They couldn't score at all.
They were a mess against that Cal team. I mean, they tried to get something together late, but you're right. They are a mess. I worry here that they are at home. And this is a get up situation where they're like, damn, we looked bad against Washington. We got to get our shit together. So I do worry about that element.
I will say though, and we've been saying it all year, the Big Ten doesn't look good. Ohio State looks great. Penn State, Ohio State was a fantastic football game. But aside from those two teams, the Big Ten looks bad. Michigan looked terrible against Northwestern. Michigan State has not looked good all season. And so I look at this team and I say, BYU beating Wisconsin doesn't impress me as much as it would have at the beginning. Also, BYU's other wins this season, McNeese State and Arizona. And Arizona's garbage. We've seen that all season. So I think Utah State can score more than BYU can. Their games this year, 42-32, 73-12, 60-13, lost to Michigan State 38-31 week 1. I think that this is a team that can put points on the board, and BYU is just not going to be able to put points up. And BYU's defense hasn't been that impressive all season either. Cal looked terrible against Oregon, and BYU barely was able to put up points against Cal. They couldn't put up anything against Washington. They only beat Wisconsin 24-21, and Wisconsin's offense isn't that good. They have Jonathan Taylor, and aside from that, what have we really seen from that offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're still getting clout for that win against Wisconsin. And Wisconsin isn't that good. So there you go. Like I said, I'm staying away because they are they're at home, and they are going to want to, put a performance out there after that abysmal Washington game.
Yeah, I was just absolutely terrible. The next one we have to talk at least about this one. I don't have any action on it, but Texas going to Oklahoma, and now we have a 7 versus a 19 right here. What do you think about this game, Will? What do you feel?
I'm leaning towards taking Texas, taking the points. I can see this game going a lot of ways, but I'd say more ways lead to you hitting the +7.5 for Texas.
+7.5. Yeah.
I mean, I could see Oklahoma blowing them out. I just think Texas defense is actually pretty legit. Mm-hmm. They held Kansas State to a few points all game, and I think Kansas State, were scoring kind of late. But I mean, Texas was in control that entire game. Don't let that final score fool you. We saw what their defense did against TCU. Mm-hmm. TCU couldn't move the ball to them at all. So I think Texas defense here is legit, and it gives them a chance to win. So if I can take 7 points, then yeah, give me that 7.5. I'm not on this just because I do think Oklahoma is a legitimate team. Yeah, they had the scare against Army, but I'm not going to let one game that they ended up winning anyway kind of deter me from thinking they're one of the top teams in the country. So, I mean, this will be an exciting game to watch on its own. Big rivalry. It'll be just an electric atmosphere. I'm not going to put anything on this one. And I don't know if you've noticed this. I've just been looking at over-unders, and they seem to just be – they don't jump out at me as they were at the beginning of the season.
There's 2 over-unders I have this week.
I think I have maybe 1 or 2. It's not many. It seems like these over-unders have kind of smartened up, at least from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and even last week I got burned on the UCF over-under, and Pittsburgh had 2 6-minute drives that resulted in 0 points. I needed 1 touchdown to push. Love it. Love it. I'm here all week, everybody. But yeah, I look at this game and I would probably lean towards Texas, but the 7.5 is just not enough. If this was 10.5, I'd be more inclined to take Texas. Then you get a touchdown and a field goal, but just 7.5. Texas could lose this game by 7. They could lose this game by 10. They could get blown out. They could win. Like Texas had one.
See, that's what I'm saying. They could win. And for that reason that they could win, that means, they could probably keep it close. They could lose by a field goal. They could lose by a touchdown. So I think that's the wise play if you are going to put action on this game. But, I don't feel that confident in it.
Absolutely. And who has Oklahoma played this season? They haven't really played anybody too impressive. So I think that I want to see how this game goes before I talk about either of these teams properly.
No, we'll learn a lot because Texas is actually one of these teams now that has played a lot of teams they played USC, they played TCU, they played Maryland, even though, they lost, but they played Kansas State. So we're getting a lot out of this Texas team, and to see how they fare against, a number 7 Oklahoma on the road, we should learn a lot. But I say that every week that we're going to learn a lot, and I end up
nothing.
Confused. So that's how college football goes, and that's why we love it.
Yeah. So next game we got Maryland at Michigan. Will.
Yes, and I don't love this, and I might be a little late on this because Northwestern covered against Michigan last week, but this is another Big Ten team that I think can cover against Michigan. Last week, it was 14 points, I think, that Michigan is favored. This week, they're favored by 17.5. And I think Maryland is a much better team than Northwestern, and I think Maryland is actually – not super legit, but they're a capable football team, and Michigan looked bad. So maybe this is a spot where Michigan is going to be at home and they're going to want to, come out and, just blow Maryland out of the water. That could happen. But I think Maryland, even if that does happen, Maryland can hang in there. They can lose by, 2 touchdowns. So this is at 17.5 right now. So I got $10 on it. Maryland to cover 17.5. I haven't seen anything from Michigan that's that impressive. I mean, their wins where they beat SMU. Great. Who else? Yeah, Nebraska, who has had problems all season. I mean, that looked impressive at the time, but man, we keep seeing Nebraska lose. They lost at home to Purdue last week. So I don't know. I haven't seen anything from Michigan that says they should be favored by 17.5 points against the pretty competent Maryland team.
Yeah, I don't have anything on this one because
I only have 10.
We saw how explosive Michigan could be against Nebraska, and that scares me. But if you think about Maryland's season so far, Maryland has beaten Texas. They killed Bowling Green and they killed Minnesota. They lost to Temple. The Temple loss is what's scaring everybody right now. If they beat Temple that week, this spread is probably in single digits. That's how much of an effect that might have had on this. Because I agree with you. Michigan has been way less than impressive. They looked terrible against Northwestern. I know they looked great against Nebraska, but everybody before that they played, other than Notre Dame, who they lost to and didn't look good in the loss, has been not a good football team. And I don't even think Nebraska, obviously Nebraska is not even a good football team. So I do think that Michigan is less than impressive. So I like where your head is at here. If I was going to put anything on this, I would have done plus 17.
And yeah, Michigan can still win by 2 touchdowns here. And they can win by 2 touchdowns and a field goal because we have that hook. So lots of ways to cover this one.
Yeah, and I don't think that they're going to win by that, by 2 touchdowns. I don't think so, but I'm not going to put anything on it. But I think your thinking here is definitely the correct way of thinking. Next up, we have our favorite team in college football. And Will, they burned you last week, but I'm assuming you're going to be back on it again. We got Illinois going to the great state of New Jersey to take on Rutgers.
Yeah, I'm betting against Rutgers again. I think this is my fourth time this season. I like it here. I mean, last week I took Indiana to cover, I think, 18 points. And Rutgers lost just by a touchdown, only by one touchdown. And now this Illinois-Rutgers game, the spread is 5.5. Illinois is minus 5.5. So I mean that's a big difference right there, from minus 18 for Indiana to minus 5.5 for Illinois. And I think Illinois and Indiana are probably comparable teams. Indiana has not been impressive all season. So give me $15 on Illinois to cover minus 5.5. If Rutgers burns me again here, maybe we can finally say they've gotten it together. But just because you lost by one touchdown, that doesn't mean you figured things out. You still lost. And even if they lose by a touchdown this week, that's within that, that covers the 5.5 on Illinois side. So there we go.
Here's the thing with this game. Last week, Rutgers losing by 17 at half. They just needed that. Then Indiana's offense just stopped scoring, and that was my biggest fear with Indiana, is that they would stop scoring. Indiana always had that game in the bag. I had a lot of friends who were at that game because they are Rutgers alumni, and they said that there was never any doubt Indiana was going to win that game. Rutgers just made it a little bit interesting, and then it still wasn't interesting.
Right, and like I said, they still lose by a touchdown here, and that falls within 5.5 points. So if Illinois can win by a touchdown, I'm all for it. I think they win by more. They probably win by 3 touchdowns.
I got 20, man. I'm all in with you.
You're with me.
I'm with you. I got 20 on Illinois.
Man, I only have 15 on it. Should I bump it up to 20? That's not me joining in on you, because I already had this bet, right?
Oh, God. Yeah, you already had this bet, but do we want to mess with this?
I think increasing it so that we're matched and we have equal stake in this game, and we can watch it together and really, be in all up in the greatness of what is Illinois at Rutgers in week 6. That's what we're here for. So yeah, bump it up to 20 for me.
Oh man, there you go, man. I bumped it up. Illinois at Rutgers, week 6, biggest game for college football pick'em pod. Oh God,
that's my only $20 bet this week.
Is it? See, I only went with $10-$20. That's what I told you I was going to do. I made sure that I was super confident in every bet I was making, because last week I learned a lesson. So next game I got is Syracuse at Pittsburgh.
I'm on this as well.
This blew my mind when I saw this, and I hope we're on the same page. How is Syracuse a 3.5-point favorite against Pittsburgh?
I don't know. I guess there maybe is some fear that, Syracuse had this really big game last week, a game they've had circled for a while. They almost won, heartbreaking loss. They have to go on the road now. Kind of like why you took Cal last week against Oregon. When I said Oregon is a much better team, you said they were that letdown and that emotional, devastating loss is going to hurt them, and it didn't. But maybe that's what people are thinking with Syracuse here, that they're going to be let down after that Clemson loss. I don't think that's the case. I think this Syracuse team is legit. And Pittsburgh is just, this is one of those teams that's just a bad team. Bad team.
Bad football.
Last week we took UCF against Pitt. We had minus 14. We covered that easily. If you're a Miami fan listening to this, you saw UNC Miami game last week. UNC is bad. That's a team Pitt lost to. So I'm with you here. I have $20 on this one. I misspoke. I now have two $20 bets.
Yeah, so. I have 20 on this one as well. This is a joke to me. And you brought up how I took Cal last week. Cal is so much better of a football team.
Right. I'm just saying it's the same idea.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And that's where if it's a game like that where it's Cal versus Oregon and Cal is a much better football team, I will sit there and I will say, you know what? Oregon has a letdown. They're going to lose. Syracuse could come out and play one quarter, only the fourth quarter, be down 14-0 and probably still win this game by a touchdown. I really believe this is my lock of the week. If I had to do out of my 10 bets, this is the one I'm the most confident in. And this, to me, I know that second half last week, Syracuse looked terrible. It was against the third-string quarterback for Clemson, considering Kelly Bryant had threatened to transfer, and now Trevor Lawrence gets knocked out with concussion-like symptoms.
So crazy.
So crazy. And they still lose, but they lost because Travis Etienne, I can never say his name. I apologize to Travis. He ran down the throat of Syracuse, and their defense was great. You know, his defense isn't great, and you know who has like a very average run game? Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh will try to run, but they're not going to be able to just wear down the defense the way that Clemson wore down Syracuse. Syracuse lost by 4, and like you said, they had it circled on their calendar all year. So did Clemson, who needed the revenge game from last year. So I love Syracuse -3.5 here. I think that this is a steal. I mean, I was going to take this even if it was like -9.5.
Yeah.
So the fact that I got it at -3.5, I almost feel like I'm doing a teaser with this. I love it.
Yeah, pour it on this one. I'll go in with you here. This is one that jumped out at me. College football pick'em pod lock of the week.
There you go, man. I love that we're on the same page. Now, do you have anything in this BC at North Carolina State game? Because I do.
I do, and it's not a lot. I have $10 on Boston College +5. They're actually underdogs here. NC State is ranked 23rd in the country, and I do think that that's why this line is what it is. I don't think there's a 5-point difference between these two teams. I think they should probably be a pick 'em. I know NC State is at home, so maybe there's 2 or 3 points there. But I think we've seen Boston College play against better football teams. We don't really know anything about NC State. They've had a really easy schedule up until this point. Yeah, they're 4-0. But I think this is a case of just a team being undefeated, so we have to rank them. We see that around this time of the year, where you just see teams kind of popping up into the, mid-20s in the rankings. And I think this is what's happening. So do you feel the same way?
No, I took the over in this.
Oh, I didn't. I took the over also. I have $10 on the over. Yeah. Both these teams can give up points, and both these teams can score. I don't see how this game doesn't go over 60.
At 58.5.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. I think it's going to clear 60 easily. So to get it at 58.5, I'm all over it. I got 10 on this over and 10 on Boston College to cover +5.
Yeah, I have 10 on the over, and here's my only thing. A.J. Dillon is hurt. He's a game-time decision. That changed the complexion of the Boston College team. All their offense runs through A.J. Dillon, but this is why I love the over even more. If A.J. Dillon scores, Boston College is going to score and give up points. If A.J. Dillon doesn't play, that means NC State is going to score like crazy against Boston College, and Boston College isn't going to be able to slow down the game like they're going to want to.
Yeah, they're going to have to throw the ball.
Yeah, and Ryan Finley's going to come out and just put up points. That's what they do. And Boston College's defense has been, if anything this year, if you want to give one word to Boston College defense, the word is unimpressive. Gave up 35 points to Temple last week, gave up 30 the week before to Purdue, 34 to Wake Forest. They give up points.
And Ryan Finley 2 of those 3 games are wins too.
Yeah. And I think that Ryan Finley is going to have himself a day this week, and I think he's going to put up a lot of points. I do think that Boston College probably covers, but I won't bet it because I don't know A.J. Dillon's status. But I like this game, both teams to be in the 30s, maybe even in the 40s for both teams. So I like this 58.5. I like this one a lot.
Yeah.
I got 20.
No, that sounds good. I got 10 on each. So, I hope A.J. Dillon plays, but even if he doesn't, I don't think, what have we seen from NC State to tell us that they're that good of a football team? I haven't seen anything yet, so book's still out on them.
Yep. The next one I got here is LSU at Florida. So LSU at Florida.
This one scared me. I mean, I had so many games this week I almost took, and this was one of them. But this one is scary.
I am not scared at all. I'm telling you what, I am not scared of this at all. This is a classic case of Florida plays in the SEC. People have heard of Florida. Let's rank them 22nd in the nation. LSU has beaten teams. LSU beat Miami. Miami is starting to find things out now. LSU beat Auburn. Auburn is still a good football team.
Auburn looks weak, though.
They look weak. Okay, do they look weaker than Tennessee? They look weaker than Colorado State? They look weaker than Charleston Southern? They look weaker than Mississippi State? No.
But those are teams Florida's beat also. It's tough with Florida because I guess we just don't know about Kentucky. Kentucky is this big question mark right now. We have Kentucky beating all these teams, and it's is Kentucky this good, or is the SEC just worse than we think? So it's hard to know with Kentucky, and until we know about Kentucky, and it's fun. We just don't know. I'm not gonna touch this because LSU. I mean, I think Miami outgained LSU in that victory, and then when they played Auburn, Auburn was like, we were watching the game. Auburn looked the part. They looked like the better team, and then LSU marches down the field late in scores and with no time on the clock, doesn't give Auburn a chance. I'm a little bit – I don't think LSU is number 5 in the country. As much as I want to believe that as a Miami fan, our only loss being to number 5 in the country, I don't see it that way. I haven't seen it from LSU yet. I want to see LSU play Georgia. I want to see LSU play Alabama, and we will see those games. I'm not convinced on Auburn either. So, I mean, it's the SEC right now is kind of it's up in the air. It's hard to like rank those teams, especially in the SEC East.
You don't think LSU is 3 points better than Florida?
I don't know. They could be, and this is gonna be a big environment.
I love those games. I think
I thought about it. I did. I saw it because what's the line right now?
2.5.
2.5, right?
I need LSU to win by a field goal.
Yeah, but there's a chance Florida steals this one. They're playing well.
Are they playing that well, though? They beat Tennessee 47-21. Tennessee is trash. They beat Mississippi State 13-6 last week. Their defense played well. But LSU is known as like this defensive team. The lowest amount of points they scored this year was 22 against Auburn. They have put up points in all of their games. I know they played Ole Miss, who they beat 45-16, but they demolished them. They're only 11-point favorites and win that game by 29. I agree with you. Is LSU the 5th best team in the country? No. Miami also wasn't the 8th best team in the country when they played against LSU. So that really helped them jump up. But this Kentucky thing and this Florida thing and this Mississippi State thing, it always comes down to the same thing with the SEC. The SEC gets points for beating other teams in the SEC. It's always considered such a good win. What happens when it's just not a good win? Like, we're here thinking that Kentucky has all these good wins under their belt. But what if Florida stinks? Like, what if South Carolina isn't good? And yeah, Kentucky's beating them, but they're beating up on the lower half of the SEC, who might be in the lower half of the Big Ten or the ACC. Okay, nobody would be in the lower half of the Big Ten with Illinois and Rutgers. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a point where it gets to that these aren't necessarily good wins. We just think they're good wins because they're beating up on SEC opponents.
Yeah, it's. I mean, this happens.
I've seen LSU beat other teams. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I hear you. I wish Kentucky played Cal or something like week 1.
I know.
Something or week 2, something like that.
Anything we can base it off of,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so there you go. I'm going to go out there. And now, before we get into what actually is the biggest game of the week, I have to tell you about our friends at Sala, Astorita and Cox LLC, a boutique law firm focusing on white-collar criminal defense and security matters. They've been featured and recognized in Florida Super Lawyers as well as Florida Legal Elite, and the partners formerly worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office and the SEC. Sala, Astorita, and Cox Attorneys at Law. You can visit their website at salalaw.com or call their toll-free number, 1-888-SEC-ATTY. It's FSU week, and yes, we are vocal in our support of the Miami Hurricanes. We're Hurricanes guys. We went to Miami, and this week they're taking on Florida State, coming off a win, 3-2, above 500 for the first time all year, suddenly getting it together. Are they getting it together? Probably not. Will, how you feeling about Florida State versus Miami?
I wish I liked this spread a little bit more. I'm leaning, I'm thinking right now, 13.5, 2 touchdowns. Yeah, Miami probably takes care of 2 touchdowns, but I don't know. How are you feeling? Florida State's bad, but this is a big game, and these games can go any way. Like, we've seen Miami almost beat Florida State when Florida State was ranked and all that, and it's gone vice versa. So I don't know.
It's a rivalry game over double digits.
Yeah.
I'm going with the dog. I'm taking Florida State plus 13.
Oh, that's terrible though. I can't do that. Like,
it's great.
If I were gonna take this game, I would take Miami to cover the 13.5 and just say, 2 touchdowns, they can handle it. If it were 14.5, that would be scary. So if you can get it at 13.5, I'm leaning that way. I want to take it. I do like this over though. That's where I have money on this right now, 48.5. I think Florida State's defense, I just don't know how they're going to slow down Miami. That's kind of a big question. And even if Miami doesn't score, let's say they get a couple, drives or punts, Florida State hasn't been able to move the ball either. Miami's defense is good. I think Miami can have some scoring defensive plays, pick 6 here or there, and then they get the ball back quickly. This Miami team can put up points. We saw them put up what was it, 47 points against UNC. They're going to want to put up points against their rival. They're at home. The crowd is energetic. They're yelling. I can see Miami continuing to pile this on, where Miami is scoring into the 40s. And all FSU, just needs to score once or twice here. So I like the 48.5 over. I got 15 on it. Not touching the spread, though, because I would never take the Seminoles. Never.
Hey, I'll do it because then if Miami goes out and they beat the crap out of Florida State, that's better than any $20 anyway. But I will say, this isn't just based on that. I do think rivalry games, man, we see it every year. I mean, even last year, Florida State was terrible last year, and Miami needed a last-second touchdown to beat them. And I know that was a doke, but still, I think that 13.5 is a lot of points. Last week, it's hard to judge it off of that with Miami beating NC 47-10. They had 3 defensive touchdowns in that game. N'Kosi Perry only threw the ball 12 times. He threw the ball 12 times, and we scored 47 points. It's not like our rushing attack was insane. It's not like we ran for 400 yards. We just didn't need that much offense last week. We get the extra rest, which I love. It's at Miami, which I love. But Florida State with DeAndre Francois, I think he finds a way to at least keep this close. It's his last chance in the rivalry game. And this is their Super Bowl right now, because this would get the taste out of their mouth of how underwhelming the start to their season has been. They needed a last-second touchdown to beat Louisville, but they got it. And I think that they're thinking to themselves, if we win this, we are 4-2. And we beat our rival, and now we have shown that we can still compete in the ACC. We can take down what is probably the second best team in the ACC. So I don't think Florida State wins. I really think that this could become a blowout in favor of Miami, but just because it's a rivalry game, we've seen this happen so many times, I like Florida State to cover the 13.5. I think it's enough points. I wish it was 14.5, though. I really do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not touching anything on the over-under.
I don't. I think that you're on the right track, but I'm scared that Florida State could lose 24-3 like they did to Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I think Miami's going to want to put up more points. And then I didn't mention this. I think Miami's kind of prone to giving up that big play, and that might be what Florida State goes for, where they're just going to huck it down the field, try some gimmicks and just bust open plays. I can see that. Like, that's how Miami kind of – I don't think you can slowly move the ball – getting, 8 first downs or 7 first downs in a long drive against this Miami defense. I think it's going to be them trying to bust open a crack, throw the ball. And, we'll see. But I think, I like that over.
Yeah, I think it could be a good over. I just worry that this game ends up being 24-14, 24-21. I mean, Miami's offense, N'Kosi Perry has looked good since he's been in. He has looked crisp. The offense looks like it's going to be faster.
And I don't think there's any reason to let up. Not when you're at home against Florida State. You get to play this team once a year. It's your biggest rival.
How's he going to handle that? That's my biggest question is how is Perry going to handle it? Because remember, last year, Rozier made probably the biggest throw of his career in that game against Florida State.
But I think, how are you going to handle that? You can handle it because FSU is terrible this year.
Agreed. But this is one game.
That might calm your nerves.
Pittsburgh was terrible last year too. That's all. And so was UNC last year.
That's a new game on the road where it's unassuming. This is a big game. And I think I've said it before. Miami likes
show
to
up in the spotlight.
They like to get up.
Yeah, they like the swag, except for week 1 of the season. We don't need to talk about that. I do like where your head's at, though, because Miami could put up a lot of points. I think that Miami's defense, too, they've had this whole bend but don't break thing pretty much all season where, they'll give up yards. UNC went right down the field, kicked a field goal, but didn't get a touchdown. They went right down the field, and then Miami picked them off and ran it, or it was a fumble for a touchdown. So
I'm hoping for some turnover chain action here.
Yeah, that's what I want. Let's humiliate the Seminoles, and you know what, though? I do think that Miami should get 4 turnovers, build up about a 28-point lead, and then purposely turn the ball over so that FSU has to have the humiliation of taking the backpack, putting it on when you're down by 4 touchdowns on the road against your rival, and they gave you the ball so that you had to put on your stupid backpack and go back to school. I think that would be fantastic.
Go back to school. That's the dumbest thing.
I love it. I love that I said that.
No, not that you said that. Just the backpack.
Oh, it's awful.
What? All right. Anything else on this game?
No, we can move on from that one, but come on, Miami. Don't break my heart. The next game I have is Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and we can talk about this one really quick. I just have the over here, 54.5. I think that this is a low over for these two teams. I know Oklahoma State's defense has been pretty good this season. Iowa State.
Okay, Iowa State too. They've had their moments.
Yeah, they only lost 17-14 to TCU. Iowa State, they beat Akron 26-13. They had 37 to Oklahoma. They only gave up 13 to Iowa. So I think they can do it. But I think that Oklahoma State ultimately, like that Kansas game, 48-28. Texas Tech, they lose 41-17. I think Iowa State's offense is good enough to put up probably 21 points in this game. And considering I like Oklahoma State to win this game, I don't want to go near the spread because it's at 10.5. But if they were to win this game by 10 and they give up 21, they're still within 2 points of this. And I think Iowa State probably ends up putting up even more than that. I think 21 is probably like the minimum they're going to put up. And I think Oklahoma State could really start to lay it on, especially if this turns into a big passing game, or if Oklahoma State can jump out to a lead. Iowa State's going to have to kind of get out of it, be shook a little bit. So I think that this game at 54.5, you're looking at, I need 8 touchdowns between these two teams, or 7 touchdowns and 2 field goals. I think that is totally reasonable. And so I think that 54.5 here, I think that that's probably the second best over under you're going to get this week.
Yeah, it is good. I mean, for a Big 12 matchup, that's kind of that seems low. So
yeah. But that's all I have to say about that one. So I only have one more bet left, and it's a very stupid football game. So let's run through some. Let's run through some.
Stupider than Illinois at Rutgers.
It might be the stupidest football game that is ever being played. I don't know. I think it's dumb. But anyway,
is it South Alabama at Georgia Southern?
No, you're right. That is dumber. You're right. Will. You found the one that would be dumber. Why don't we jump to?
Well, I got one. Let's go to the next Miami game. Miami of Ohio is going to Akron.
Yeah,
I think this Akron team is a bit sneaky, and yeah, like they beat Northwestern. I had them covering 21 points. They end up winning outright against Northwestern. But then they played Iowa State last week, and they hung in there. And yeah, they weren't gonna win, but Iowa State's a legitimate football team, and they're hanging in there. And then Miami of Ohio hasn't really done all that much. They lose to Western Michigan last week. They gave up 23 points to Bowling Green. If you looked at Bowling Green's schedule, they got blown out. GT beat Bowling Green 63-17. Maryland beat them 45-14. And Miami of Ohio only wins by 15. I know 15, yeah, that's two touchdowns and a point, but still, it's Bowling Green. I don't think Miami of Ohio is that impressive, where I do think Akron actually has some talent. I watched them play Northwestern. Like, they can look good. They have playmakers on that team. Akron is at home here, and they're only 3.5-point dogs, or favorites, excuse me. So I see Akron winning this easily. I think the only thing I worry here is like a backdoor from Miami of Ohio, where like Akron's up 10 to 17 points the whole game, and they get a late touchdown or something. That's my only worry, but I feel pretty good about Akron covering 3.5 points at home. I got $15 on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good bet, man. Akron's pretty good. Miami, Ohio has not done anything. I don't know much about Miami, Ohio. That's why I steered away from this game. They lost to Western Michigan by one last year.
I watched them play a little bit.
Yeah,
I forget which game I watched, but yeah, they did not look all that good. It's hard to watch.
Killed by Cincinnati 21-0.
I think it might have been that game.
Yeah,
because Cincinnati is actually they've looked pretty good this season.
Yeah.
I think they're a pretty strong team.
And not for nothing, Akron kept it close with Iowa State, and then they're coming off a bye. They didn't play last week. They kept it close, lost by 13 to Iowa State. Now they had a bye coming into this week. So, the more you talk about this one, the more I like this one. I won't hop on it with you, but I will say that I believe that this is a very good bet.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And I don't think we have a curse yet of you joining me on bets. I don't think so.
You know what? Let's not start it though.
Okay. That's a good call too. I'll take this one on my own.
Yeah, you take this one on your own. Maybe I'll throw some money at it in real life though, because that's a good line for an Akron team. I wanted to take them 2 weeks ago when they were playing against Iowa State because they were 19-point underdogs, and I was like, they could keep this close against Iowa State. Yeah, Iowa State's more of a defensive team, and they did. They lost by 13, and really they were losing by 10 most of that game, I think, and then it was a field goal at the end. So this really wasn't in danger.
Yeah, not at all. I like Akron here.
Yeah. All right, man. You're what do you have next? You have a bunch of games in a row here that I just don't have. So if you want to kind of talk about yours.
Sure. I think the next one up, a lot of these games at the same time, but I have San Diego State at Boise State. Boise State has had 2 road games in a row. One was a loss to Oklahoma State, and the other was a 20-point win at Wyoming. So they're coming home to that blue grass, and I think they put on a show. San Diego State has looked good at times, but we were watching that Arizona State game. It was a fluky win. Arizona State, I believe, was up like 14-0 or 10-0 at some point. San Diego State clawed their way back. There's lots of scoring in the fourth quarter, a targeting thing at the end. I don't think San Diego State is all that good. They just had a narrow victory against Eastern Michigan. I think they won by 3 points. So the spread here is only Boise State -14. So this is, I think, a spot where Boise State hasn't really had that explosive feel. When they've had their only home game was 62-7 against UConn. So I see Boise State kind of running away with this one. And there's no reason, I think, for San Diego State to really fight and hang in there. They're on the road. They know Boise State's the better team. They're going to lose anyway. I like this one. I just do. I think this is a spot where, and when Boise State wins games, they really lay it on. They lay it on thick. Even when they're on the road against Wyoming last week, they still won by 20 points. So I like -14. I got $15 on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I'm just kind of staying away from it because of San Diego State, because I can't figure that team out. But I do think that this is a good bet. If you're going to bet this game, I would probably lean towards Boise State. But San Diego State, like you said, they've been so up and down. I just can't figure out which one I like more, like who I like more here.
I just like them at home against an inferior opponent. We talked about this. It's kind of like UCF, and I think we'll get to UCF in a bit. Teams that when they know they're the better team, they lay it on thick. And Oklahoma State, Boise State didn't look good in that game, but Oklahoma State's just a better team. Yeah. And so they don't look good. Boise State, if they're better, they look really, really good.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree. All right. Well, yeah, man, just keep on running down. You got looks like your next one up. You have SMU at UCF.
There we go. Right into that.
There you go.
UCF is number 12 now. They're finally climbing up the rankings, getting some respect. I think this is the highest they've been ranked, maybe ever. Yeah, this is a 24-point spread, and I know that's a lot. And I usually don't hop on 24-point favorites, but like I just said, UCF is a team that blows out teams that it's better than. And yeah, I saw SMU scare me with TCU. TCU was, what were they, 21-point favorites, and SMU had like a 10-point lead, and it was looking bad. Yeah. TCU goes on to win that game by 30 points. So even when SMU actually hangs in for a quarter or for a quarter and a half, I mean, they still got blown out and killed. And UCF is a much better team than TCU, at least what I'm seeing now. TCU does not look like, TCU playing Texas trying to move the ball was sad.
Yeah.
And you look at UCF, no matter what they're doing, they're moving the ball on offense. They're throwing that thing around. So I like this score to be somewhere like 50-13.
Yeah, I think that
50-21. 55.
I think UCF's the real deal, man.
I think they are too.
Yeah.
Like what have they done this season to make us doubt them?
Yeah, they've blown it. I mean, they beat Pittsburgh 45-14 last week. And I love that, like, people were actually thinking.
Wait, we're supposed to doubt them because of that?
No, I think people were, like, surprised almost that it was that bad. And I was like, Pittsburgh's a bad football.
That was our lock of the week last week.
Thank God, because all the other ones we got wrong. How much you have with UCF here?
Excuse me. I got 15 on that.
Okay. So before I jump into my last bet, which will be the best game of the week, I just want to mention two spreads that are going on at the same time. These are 4:00 games on the East Coast. Kentucky at Texas A&M. Kentucky's actually a 5.5-point dog. And I don't have anything on this game because I don't understand either of these football teams. But I think that shows you just how much respect people are giving Kentucky. Zero. number 13 in the country, 5.5-point underdogs to a team that's not even ranked. I think that's crazy. I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't have a say either way on it because I don't really understand this Kentucky football team. But I just want to throw
again, that's one where it's like we gotta see what happens here. I mean, that Kyle Field advantage is pretty big, so I do see a little bit of that. But yeah, I mean, Texas A&M should probably be ranked. Their 2 losses are to Clemson, a close game, Clemson and Alabama. So I mean, that's an A&M team that's probably should be ranked anyway, but instead Florida sneaks in.
They didn't look impressive against
NC
Arkansas
State
last week.
I mean, why is NC State ranked and Texas A&M isn't? I get one team is 4-0 and the other is 2 losses, but you look at those teams play, and what would the spread be against Texas A&M and NC State? That's why rankings really mess with your head and hopefully mess with other people's heads, so you can find some value at least.
Well, and this is why I don't like this, is because now Kentucky loses to A&M, and all of a sudden A&M is going to jump up as if they beat some great team, but they were 5.5-point favorites anyway. How many teams jump up in the rankings as if like when they beat a team that they're 5.5-point favorites over? Do you know what I mean? Like, even though they're beating the 13th ranked team and they're at home, they are beating a team that they're 5.5-point favorites over. So is it really like they're beating the 13th ranked team, or were they already better than this team anyway and should have been ranked higher than them?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm with you. I mean, this could be a good spot to take Kentucky, even if they lose by a field goal.
But I don't think they keep it that close, to be honest. Benny Snell is really, really good, though. That's all I will say.
Kentucky's defense is legit. It really is.
Who they've played against.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's a reason why neither of us are taking this game.
Yeah, I mean, they've played against Central Michigan, Florida, Murray State, Mississippi State, and South Carolina. None of those teams have really shown otherwise that their offenses are great. So maybe that doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And then the other one that I wanted to mention, and this one real quick, UAB at Louisiana Tech. I originally had money on this one. It was at -7. It jumped all the way up to -10. I'm ignoring it. I think Louisiana Tech is a good football team. They're the ones who ended up knocking off. Who did they play last week? Were they the ones who beat? Sorry, I'm completely having a brain fart. But anyway, Louisiana Tech, I think, is a good football team. I just don't think that I can sit here and say that they deserve a 10-point favorite over.
Yeah, this was the team that burned us last week. With North Texas.
They beat North Texas. That's right. Yeah. That's who it was. Sorry, I had a brain fart. But I think that that proves that, like, hey, they beat North Texas. They were big underdogs. I was really all in because Louisiana Tech played LSU close. I'm still not completely sold, though, that they're going to be able to blow a team out. So I will say 10 points is a little too much for me. I liked having a touchdown leeway, but having anything more than that, I'm not going to do. But I just wanted to point that one out. And now I'm going to make my final bet of the week.
Are you on this with me?
I am not, Will. Don't worry. Okay. My final bet of the week. This one comes in right before Will's next game. I have UTSA at Rice. The game of the week. I have 20 on it. I got UTSA plus 2.5. UTSA opened up as 2-point favorites. They are now 2.5-point underdogs. We saw this last week when Kentucky opened as 2-point favorites, ended up as 2-point underdogs when the game went off. They blew out South Carolina. I think the initial line is what's correct here. I think that they're better than Rice. And I think that Rice really isn't a good football team. UTSA is known for their rush defense. I know known is using probably the wrong word there because are they even known? But they have a good run defense. That's what they have. Rice only wants to run the ball. So if UTA's strength is taking away Rice's strength, I trust UTSA to score points and to win this game. And all they have to do is win the game. I'm going to take the points up plus 2.5 in case they lose one where it's really close. But like Rice's only win this season, Prairie View, 31-28. Come on. You know what I mean? Like I mean, they get blown out by everybody else they play. Got blown out by, they got killed by Hawaii. Even though
that Hawaii Rice game was glorious.
Yeah, terrible. They got killed by Houston. They got killed by Southern Miss. Got killed by Wake Forest. And UTSA, they've beaten Texas State and UTEP. I know they're not two very good teams, but that's 2 wins in a row. And now you've got to play Rice, who I just don't think is any good. So I like plus 2.5 for UTSA. Book it. Best game of the weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to stay off that one. But I do, I guess, agree because Rice is that bad.
Yeah, there you go, man.
Bet against the bad teams.
All right, man. Well, let's run through your last 3 bets, right? You have 3 games left.
Yes. So I got UConn at Memphis. This spread is bizarre to me. And I only have $10 on it because there's something I'm missing. And I get it. UConn is bad. Memphis is favored by 5 touchdowns.
Wow.
So I'm taking UConn plus 35. Whenever you see a plus 35, you kind of got to perk up a bit. There's another, I think Arkansas is also plus 35, but they are playing Alabama. So I'll stay away from that one. But yeah, this is odd.
35 is a lot of points.
Like I said last week, I'm like, Memphis isn't that good. They were, I think, what were they? Favorites against Tulane last
14
week.
and a half.
14 and a half favorites against Tulane. And I said Tulane covers that. And guess what? Tulane wins. What was it, like 40 to 24?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Memphis has also lost to Navy. There are only 2 wins where they like put up a bunch of points and covered 35. Actually, in one of those games, they didn't even cover 35. But they were complete cupcakes. And yeah, UConn is trash, but if you're like UConn's not Power 5, but they're a big school.
Yeah.
You gotta have some pride. Like 35 points.
Like I mean, UCF beat UConn 56-17. Memphis isn't as good as UCF, so I don't see them. I mean, that's what 39 points. That's barely covering that.
Right,
and that's UCF.
And that's UCF, number 12 in the country, versus this is Memphis, a team that lost to Tulane by 16.
Syracuse only won by 30 over UConn. 35 is a lot of points.
It's a lot. I agree with 5 touchdowns is a lot. So I don't know where that is coming from. So I got $10 on UConn to cover. I'm curious to see what happens because that just it seems so odd that I don't want to like. It's like there's something I'm missing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to Notre Dame at Virginia Tech. This
huge game.
This is the wrong bet. What I'm doing, this is completely wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway. This is not the right way to bet. I mean, Notre Dame just beat Stanford, huge win. They're going on the road to play Virginia Tech, who had a solid win against Duke. They're figuring things out. They're on the up and up. I mean, this is the perfect slip-up game for Notre Dame. Like everything says, bet VT here, but I'm not. I'm taking Notre Dame minus 6.5. I've watched a lot of Stanford Notre Dame games in my life. I've been to probably 5 of them. And they're usually dogfights. Like they're battles. Any team, you watch the teams play, it's like, oh, those teams could play 100 times. It would go 50-50 or maybe 60-40. These 2 teams, Notre Dame and Stanford, they play 100 times. I think Notre Dame wins like 90 times.
Yeah, they killed them.
Like Notre Dame was clearly the better team. Ian Book has figured that offense out. Notre Dame's pass rush just I mean, KJ Costello couldn't do anything. And it wasn't really his fault. It was like he had no time. That pass rush was legit. I love Notre Dame's defense right now. And I think like I said, Virginia Tech is like what you would think to do in this situation with all the other factors. But I just think Notre Dame is a much better team than Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech got Old Dominion out of their system. They beat a solid Duke team. Notre Dame is this good, I think. So if you can get this, it's at 6.5 right now. I have 15 on it, just because I think Notre Dame definitely covers by a touchdown.
Yeah, that's fair. I avoided this because of how good Virginia Tech looked against Duke. I mean, and Duke had Daniel Jones back, which was shocking.
That might have hurt. Because Quentin Harris was rocking that too.
He was. You're right. Well, we'll see what ends up happening, but I'm not gonna touch that game. I'm terrified. I'll watch it.
I don't want to, but it's such a watching that Stanford game, and it's like maybe it's just my bias because I'm like, oh, I'm a Stanford fan, and I've watched them play. I don't want them to be that bad, so Notre Dame must be that good. But I don't think that's it. Like they dominated and they looked good doing it.
Dude, the thing is, Lane Stadium, prime time. There are a few harder places to play than Lane Stadium, dude. That stadium, I've been there for a primetime game. Now, granted, Miami killed Virginia Tech that year, but Virginia Tech was terrible when I went. But
they're not terrible now.
They're not terrible now. They lost Old Dominion, but they just killed Duke. They won enough games. I just think it's such a hard place to play, and that game being at 8 p.m. on ABC. Remember, this is also the time that year when Miami killed Virginia Tech was also when Virginia Tech had beaten Ohio State when Ohio State won the national championship. They get up for these types of games. You're playing at Lane. This is such a hard game.
I know, and I get it. Like, and that's why I preface the saying, like, this is time for the slip up. But I think Notre Dame, this is a better Notre Dame team than we've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah,
I really do.
Yeah, they do look. They look the part right now. You're right.
All right. And again, I don't love that one, but hey, I got $15 on it because I do.
All right, man. Let's do this last bet of the night.
This is just a get-up game for Stanford, and I want to think Stanford isn't as bad as they looked. I mean, what if Virginia Tech beats Notre Dame, and then we're like, oh, damn, Notre Dame's not that good. That means Stanford's terrible. And then Utah beats Stanford.
Yeah.
I'm not going with that story. I'm going with the other story, that Stanford is a good, if not solid, football team, and Notre Dame is just that much better. So these are kind of paired up, where I think Notre Dame is going to beat Virginia Tech, and I think Stanford is going to come up. They're at home. It's -5. Utah's coming to town. There's been a lot of talk about this Utah team, but they haven't done much. I think they lost to Washington State last week, or what that game end up at? I remember being like in the 30s, but close.
I don't have it in front of me.
We saw Washington handle Utah pretty easily when that was supposed to be a close game. I just think Utah isn't as good as we thought they were in Stanford. Everyone saw their poor performance.
They lost 28-24 to Washington State.
Yeah. So Stanford, it's time to kind of, all right, get back on the saddle. You lost your first game of the year to probably a top 5 team. That doesn't mean your season's over. Remember, Notre Dame is not a Pac-12 loss. You're still undefeated in the Pac-12. So it's time to get a win. And I think they cover 5 points here. I got 15 on it.
Yeah, you could win the Pac-12 and still be in consideration at the end of the season here with that loss and how bad they looked in that loss. Like, that's still a feasible thing. Also, Utah, I never thought they were good. I think that people have blown this team out of proportion. They've played 2 real teams this year, Washington and Washington State. They lost both of them. They beat Northern Illinois 17-6. They beat Weber 41-10. Neither one of those games, and they only Northern Illinois 17-6. They had a bye week after Washington to get that taste out of their mouth of how they did nothing, and they still lose to Washington State 28-24.
So I think 5 points is just
I think it's low. I think it's disrespecting
Stanford. Stanford looked bad, so I do get it, but I just think I think Stanford's got some talent, and I know Bryce Love's hurt, but he might be back, and that's not what this year's Stanford team has been about. It's about KJ Costello throwing the ball to Arcega-Whiteside.
Yeah.
They've looked good. And Notre Dame, that's what Stanford does. They can beat the teams they're better than. They run into a good team and look bad. And that's what, like I said about Boise State. And I think when we see these teams look bad, it's when another team just has your number. You don't look good. That doesn't mean you can't come out the next week and, find some good matchups and exploit stuff on the other end. So I like Stanford -5 there.
Yeah, I like that. I think
that wraps it up for me.
Yeah, I think that's the right read. So there you go. So I'm going to run back through mine because I haven't talked in so long because Will's been doing the last 3 bets.
Yeah, and my voice is gone. So if you could run back.
Yeah, dude, you sound sick. Too. I'll run through yours too. So I have Troy -15.5. All my bets were for 20. I have Troy -15.5, Marshall -6, Utah State straight up +115, Illinois -5.5, Syracuse -3.5, Boston College, NC State over 58.5, LSU -2.5, Florida State +13.5. Iowa State, Oklahoma State over 54.5, UTSA +2.5. Will, you got Georgia Tech -4.5, Maryland +17.5, 20 on Illinois -5.5. Lock of the week, we both said it, Syracuse -3.5. 10 on Boston College +5, 10 on Boston College, North Carolina State over 58.5, 15 on Florida State, Miami over 48.5, 15 on Akron -3.5, 15 on Boise State -14, 15 on UCF -24, 10 on UConn +35. That's a huge number. 15 on Notre Dame -6.5, and 15 on Stanford -5. So that is our bets for week 6 of college football pick'em pod.
And yeah, I bet we do this Probably same time next week. Probably Wednesday evening.
Yeah, because
Depends. Our schedules are kind of in flux, so we'll try to get it out. You know, it could come out on a Monday. I hope not, because over-unders aren't released.
yeah,
But yeah, just look out for it. Sorry for the delay, but it might not be a delay. It might just be a schedule change.
it might be a schedule change, and it might also be for our benefit, because now we can, we have a little bit more time to look at it, a little bit more time to think about it, and the spreads are moving, and we can look at it and say, wow, I can't believe that one moved that way, and I can't believe the Syracuse one hasn't moved at all. So, yeah, I think that Wednesday might become what it is. But follow us on Twitter at it's Pick'emPod at Pick'emPod. Find us on YouTube. We are College Football Pick'emPod, or find us over on Canes Insight, where we are going to be in their podcast thing tomorrow morning, and we might be hidden by their bigger episode, but don't forget us.
Yeah, and you can find us on iTunes. Just search College Football Pick'emPod. Leave a review on iTunes or a rating or both.
Yeah.
That always helps us out. And yeah, Phil, you got anything else?
No, we'll see everybody next week.
All right, let's hope for a good week. I think
yeah,
we have it in us.
Better.